Alrighty, let's get into things. 12 o'clock on the dot. Welcome to my live stream. This is the first one I've ever done. We're going to be pan searing a steak. I was going to cook this for lunch anyway, so I thought, you know what, let's just make some content out of this. Why not? And look, my expectations are pretty much zero for this live stream. If I get 1 or 100 viewers, I really don't mind, but I appreciate you being here. All right, let's get into it. So first things first, we're obviously going to get our steak out of the packaging. This is a grass-fed beef chuck eye, which is, it's the steak that sits directly in front of the ribeyes on the shoulder end of the cow. It's probably my favorite cut of steak just because it's cheap, but it's also very, very flavorful. Very similar to a ribeye in flavor, but way cheaper, probably half. And you can see there's some really, really great marbling through there, so we already know this is gonna be awesome. First thing that you wanna do, obviously, when you've opened up your steak, is make sure that you're patting it down. And the reason for that is we wanna make sure we're getting a good crust on our steak. And wet or water is the enemy of a good crust. So the drier we can make the outside of the steak, the better. It doesn't have to be anything too crazy. Just grab some paper towels, dab the outside of it. That's all we gotta do. As for seasoning, we're keeping it simple, salt and pepper today. Honestly, that's what I'm using 99% of the time when I'm cooking a steak, because I want that beefiness and that steakness to actually present itself. Using a lot of different barbecue rubs and things like that, you have the chance of burning the outside, but also you kind of mask the flavor of the steak. So that's why we're just going with salt and pepper today. Always go on with the salt first, then going on with our pepper, giving it a little pat. You don't need to use a binder, you totally can if you want to. Again, I just keep it nice and simple. Salt and pepper, no binder. There we go. Just shape up the steak a little bit to make sure we're going to get an even cook. I'm going to set that to the side for a second and get our burner out. Now today we are going to be using a cast iron pan. There we go. That's on now. Cast iron pan. When it comes to searing a steak, cast iron or stainless steel, those are your ways to go. The reason being is they get quite hot, like much hotter than a regular like Teflon pan or a non-stick pan, and they retain heat much better, which means we're gonna get a really, really great crust. If you're just using like a Teflon or something like that, although it's hot to your hand, to the outside of the steak, it's not that hot. So it might cook the steak fine, but you're not going to get an incredible crust on the outside while having the inside stay cooked well. To get a very, very good crust on like a Teflon, you'd have to overcook the steak essentially. So we're gonna leave this to warm up for about a minute or two. And in the meantime, I'm just gonna quickly talk about the beef tallow. So beef tallow is what we're gonna be using as our oil of choice. Again, something like olive oil, maybe you've used to cook steaks in the past, not the best option, only because it has a low smoke point, where something like beef tallow or avocado oil has a much higher smoke point. And what that means is it can get hotter before it starts to smoke. And again, that heat, that high heat is what we want to get a good crust. So popping in some beef tallow. Now I'm pretty generous with the beef tallow. I've just put about 2 tablespoons in there for a single steak. And the reason for that is, I don't know, I find more is always better than less. I'll pop that over there for now. And we're just gonna swivel this around until it's ready to go. So yes, more is always better than less if you have too little, because the meat will soak up some of that beef tallow as it's cooking, and so you don't want to be left with nothing in the pan as it's cooking and as you're flipping it around. So always putting a little bit more sort of pooling at the bottom. It also means that the beef tallow is going to kind of spray up into the steak, because the steak, although it looks flat, it's got these little crevices. So if that beef tallow is like spitting up into the steak, you're going to get crust all around. Now, you know when your pan is hot enough when you have smoke coming off the top of it. Not a massive amount of smoke, just a little bit like this. We're gonna turn that pan down a little bit. We had it on high heat to heat up. I'm now going to about a medium to medium heat, and we're just gonna go on with the steak. Pressing it down so we get some good contact with the pan. And if you do have one, you can get a steak press or a burger press and just set that on top. That's also going to help apply pressure to the steak, and it's going to give it better contact with the pan. Again, all for getting that good crust and just even cooking. Going to give our hands a quick wipe. Now I like to keep my steak on the same side for roughly 60 seconds, just again to heat up and to get that good crust going. We're going to flip, leave it for 60 seconds again, and then we're going to keep flipping the steak every 30 seconds. And the reason that we want to be flipping the steak every 30 seconds is so that we get an even cook all the way throughout. There's been heaps of videos done that I've watched where people just do like 3 minutes on one side, flip 3 minutes on the other, and you get a thicker gray band, where if you're doing like 60, 60, and then flip every 30 seconds, the gray band is going to be minimalized because there's less contact with the pan, and you're just going to get a much better cook and a much better steak. All right, so it's been about 60 seconds, taking off our press, and we're going to flip it over. You can see the crust is already starting to develop, but it's nothing crazy at the moment. There we go. Give it a little move around, and we're going to press that directly back on. Now, if I had a bigger pan, I would be moving the steak around to the hotter areas. So if I had it on like one section of the pan and I'm flipping it, I'm gonna try and flip it onto an area that the steak wasn't, just so that we're getting more heat onto the steak. Because I do have a small pan, I'm pretty limited in that. I do just kind of have to flip it onto the same part of the pan, which is not ideal, but it's still gonna get the job done. All right, keeping that on for a little bit more. As for internal temperatures go today, I do like my steak on the rarer side, so I'm probably going to take it off at around 45 degrees to 48 degrees Celsius, which is rare to mid-rare. If you like your steak done a little bit more, maybe more medium rare to medium, I would be looking at taking it off at maybe 52 to 55 if you want that top end of medium. All right, let's go in again. And now this is where we're gonna start flipping the steak every 30 seconds. So here's our first flip. Wiggle the steak around a little bit, make sure we get that tallow all in those crevices, and we're popping it back on. I am also gonna be making a steak sauce to go along with this steak at the end of the cook. So when we take this off and it's resting, I'm gonna show you how to make a quick steak sauce. And this is a red wine sauce. It's absolutely incredible. It literally takes like 2 minutes to make after you've cooked your steak as well. So we've got that on the table as well. Man, I'm getting hungry just smelling this thing. So another 30 seconds, go for that flip. And I know you guys can't see it just yet, but that steak crust is already starting to develop. Maybe the next flip, I'll give it to the camera again. Might just quickly pop that down there. If I'm gonna be showing the steak off, don't want to get too many juices on the table here. Cool, there we go. But yeah, to give you guys an example of like how cheap this steak is, a dry aged ribeye at my local butcher is probably $50 a kilo. Even a Scotch fillet, yeah, $50, $60 a kilo. This is $35 a kilo, and again, you're getting pretty much the same flavor, which is awesome. So I'll give you guys a little look. As that crust is starting to develop a little bit. Again, we've still got quite a long way to go. I'm not even gonna worry for the first like 3 or 4 minutes about checking the temperature, because I know it's nowhere near done. But at this next flip, I'll give the temperature gauge a little go, and we'll see how we are. So that's the other thing to think about is, if you wanna get the best steak possible and you wanna cook a perfect steak every time, temperature gauge is the only way to go. Like if you've cooked thousands of steaks and you're a chef, maybe you can go off time and feel a little bit, but for us newbies, temperature gauge is the way to go. I've cooked hundreds of steaks, if not thousands of steaks. I still don't trust myself eyeballing it. So I'm always going with a temperature gauge. So let's go in now and see where we're at. All right, so we're sitting at 38, 35, and over here is 44. So I do like to kind of prong different areas of the steak just to see where we're at. Now we do have a thinner part of the steak here, which is almost where we want it, but that thicker part of the steak is still sort of 10 degrees below. So sometimes if I have a little bit of an uneven steak, I will pick that thin part up and sort of hold it above the pan while the other parts are still cooking. So I'm gonna do that a little bit now just so that we get a pretty even cook. And that's the other reason why I like to cook my steaks on the rarer side, because I'm gonna be probing that thick part. If we do end up having a thin piece, it's still not gonna be overcooked because we've cooked the thicker part on like a little bit more of a rarer side. So the thin part is gonna be pretty much perfect for most people. So still applying pressure, still flipping. That crust is really developing up now. I'll give you guys another quick look. Crust is coming along nicely. We've been cooking for about 5 minutes at the moment. Let's go in again with our temperature probe and just see where we're at. All right, we're at 44, 44. So probably only got another 30 seconds on this cook. So we're gonna give it one last flip. Press down. Now we're not going to be basting the steak because we are going to be making a sauce. If I wanted to baste the steak, I would have had to do it much earlier in the cook. So today's just a simple pan sear. And honestly, this is probably my favorite way to have a steak anyway. I mean, you know, you're done in less than 10 minutes. And all right, we are going to be taking the steak off. Let's go. That thicker part is like 44 degrees still, but the other parts are starting to reach 48 to 50. So we're taking that off. And all we're gonna do now is pop it onto a drying rack. So one of these stainless steel racks. Best thing I ever bought, honestly. So popping that on there, that's gonna rest for a little bit of time. We're gonna turn down our pan to low. There we go, so we don't burn anything. And we're gonna get onto our steak sauce. Now, again, there's so many different things you can do with steak sauces, chimichurri, compound butter. I'm gonna go in with a red wine sauce today. So what you're gonna do is keep your tallow / beef juices in the pan, turn it down to low. You're gonna start with the red wine sauce, or red wine. It's not a sauce yet. Just be careful, you are gonna get some splashback there, and it's quite hot. Whoa, a lot of splashback today. And then we are going to go in with our cream. Now, I have never had that much splashback when I've added the red wine sauce. That was something. I have no idea what happened there. My goodness. Okay. There we go. Once you've got those two ingredients in, you're gonna just start mixing, again, popping it down to low. Start stirring, and all we're doing now is we're just wanting to thicken this up a little bit. You'll see it's gonna start to bubble, it's gonna start to go like a purplish brown color, and that's exactly what you want. Make sure it's going nice and low. You don't want it to burn too much, but you want those bubbles coming through, so it's gonna thicken. Once that's off for maybe 30 seconds, we're gonna go in with a lot of pepper. So in we go, whole ton of pepper. And I do like to go in with another generous serving of salt. Give that another mix. And then I honestly just like to kind of add the ingredients to taste. So I can already tell now by the color of this, it's quite purple, that I've probably added a little bit too much wine and not enough cream. So I'm gonna go in with some cream. All right. Now to think of it, in previous times, I have gone in with the cream first. That's why I haven't gotten much splashback. So if you're gonna make this sauce, cream first, then go on with the wine. That was my bad. And we're gonna go in with a little bit more. And give it a mix. I'm looking for more of like a creamy purple rather than like a deep purple. All right, and let's give it a little taste test. Touch more pepper and we'll be good to go. Cool. You can really taste that wine. Again, I'm not a big one for measuring when it comes to sauces. I think it's always best to just go off flavor of whoever's cooking, because some people like things differently, yeah? I don't want to give you measurements for a sauce that you're not going to enjoy. You're just going to have to tweak it to the way that you like it. Okay, now that she has thickened up quite significantly, we're going to remove our cooker since we're not using it anymore. And we're going to put that sauce into a little tray to hold on to. So there we go, sauce is going in. Awesome. And that's done right there. My goodness, we still have a little bit of wine to clean up. That was honestly hilarious. Okay, now that steak has been resting for about 5 minutes. When it comes to resting my steaks, I usually tend to rest longer than not, just because I kind of like having my steaks that little bit cooler. So I usually like to rest for anywhere from 8 to 10 minutes. Even for a regular steak, but I think 5 minutes is completely fine. So I'm gonna quickly just move the camera a little bit closer. We're gonna do a slice in, and yeah, we're gonna eat some steak. Okay, we are back. Let's get into this steak. So, taking it off the wire rack now. You can really see that that's crisped up nicely on the outside. You can see the juices coming off it. Look at that incredible crust. Like, that is just awesome. That's exactly what I want out of my steak. Okay, let's slice in and see what we got. Actually, before we do that, first, you can see another thing about the chuck eye steak is that it's kind of in sections. You've got sort of one section here, one section here, one section here, divided by these membranes and layers of fat. So it is a little bit of a difficult steak to cook because of that, but we got there in the end. All right, let's splice in and see how we did. Coming over the side here. And when you go for that thick piece right on the end. Ooh, that, my friends, is how we like our steak. As I said, I do like to have things a little bit on the rarer side. So you can see that thick part is quite rare and the thin side over here is more medium to medium rare. So if we go on the thin side here as well, you'll see that it's a little bit more cooked to probably how most people like it. There you go. And that's what I was mentioning before, where I cook things on the rarer side, on the thick piece, so that the thinner parts of the steak don't become overcooked. So let's get a couple more slices here. So here's a piece from the middle. Look at that. That's perfect. And let's see how it looks with that sauce. Awesome. Awesome, awesome, awesome. All right, and of course, we got to go in for a taste. Oh, it does not get much better than that. I think I could literally eat this every single day for the rest of my life and I'd be happy. Wow. Well guys, I want to say thank you for coming to my first live stream. I hope you enjoyed and I hope you learned something. If you want to see more of these, let me know. I'm hoping to do these a little bit more frequently. Maybe start with one a week and go from there. But yeah, this was really fun. Thanks for watching, and I'll see you in the next one. Time to eat my